Many businesses are embracing advances in the digital economy, while others may be falling behind. As the digital economy enters a new dynamic period, I'm here to meet with a company that specializes in financial solutions to simplify international trade. I'm Greg Fairley. Welcome to 50 MENA Leaders. Tom Davis, great to see you. Great to meet you. Thanks for being on the program. Can you tell us, first of all, what you think the major differences are between fintech and the more traditional financial services?
Fintech is incredibly disruptive, incredibly innovative. Let's just take, for example, traditional financial services. Typically slow, cumbersome, old and archaic processes, expensive. Now when we combine that with fintech, we get innovative new ideas that are disrupting the market, giving consumers and businesses different ways, different options, different ways to work.
What do you think the role of fintech is in the future?
I think its role is going to be massive. Let's have a look at where fintech has really made its mark already. So first and foremost, you've got digital banks and digital wallets. You've then got investment platforms online, which are allowing the consumers to invest without, huge fees, very, very clunky processes. Going back to, digital banking has completely redefined the way we do our banking. This again will continue. Looking at Ebury and what it's done, it has redefined the way we make payments, the way we receive and pay out money. Access to finance, rather than going through the very slow, clunky process typically, with banks or other providers, being able to have access to finance very quickly to help grow and develop your business. So yes, fintech is going to play a very, very big part in the growth of financial services. What you're seeing more and more is, the traditional institutions are now starting to adopt fintech practices and even buy fintech businesses. If you look at Ebury, for example, we are now majority owned by Santander. This is where a top 10 global bank that has set up effectively a fintech arm called PagoNext, where they invest and they buy fintech businesses. They feel that this, in the long run, will help them develop and grow. So I think, moving forward, it's going to be a very, very exciting time for fintech.
Where's the innovation coming from in the fintech sector? And, is that innovation completely disrupting the traditional financial services model?
Yeah, look, I think we've seen huge disruption. As I touched on earlier, looking at mobile banking, it's completely redefined how we bank. Traditionally we had to go down to the branch. We have to pay checks in terms of paying money, receiving payments. Like investment platforms. These are now open to consumers who maybe want to invest a few dollars. We've seen the introduction of payment gateways for e-commerce businesses, which allows customers to make payments through multiple methods. We've seen a huge growth in alternative lending, which allows, smaller businesses access to capital and finance in order to free up working capital and grow their businesses. So, even if I take those, you can see already there's huge disruption, across the finance world, through the introduction of and growth of these fintech businesses.
So for the underbanked, the underserved section of the market, for people and also businesses, how can Ebury help them?
So what Ebury is and has done, since its inception in 2009 is effectively offer an alternative to a traditional bank. Now, traditional banks, when you looked at payments and FX, have always been very, very expensive. We've also combined that, with a lending product. Now, where does Ebury operate is the next question. Ebury traditionally services a segment of the banks traditionally service that we feel is very underserviced. Because the banks have so many clients, what they typically do will offer a one-size-fits-all approach. If you qualify for certain things, you get that. You might get this, you might not get that. What Ebury does is give clients access to all of these products, all of these services, and really we want to understand the data behind it. We want to understand your business, and we want to be able to tailor-make a solution that actually fits and is actually valuable for your business.
So this will help international business and it'll help international trade. I mean, fintech can directly be at the source of that.
Absolutely. Ebury's motto or tagline is "What borders?" And the aim of that is to, reduce the borders that have traditionally been associated with international trade. So allowing businesses to be able to penetrate new markets quicker, allowing businesses to be able to enter these markets quickly. Now, maybe that's through a collection network. Maybe that's through, the ability to hedge currency. Maybe that's the ability to send payments quicker, more efficiently, at a cheaper cost. When we look at the growth of international trade, we don't only look at payments, but also, we look at lending. Ebury does have a lending proposition in a number of the countries where we operate. The alternative lending space is huge at the moment. Being able for businesses to log in and digitally access capital in order to grow their business. That again will help businesses grow internationally. So, look, I think it's a huge opportunity.
Ebury is really saying, what borders? So are businesses aware that, in a sense, there are no borders in fintech? You can really go after your goals.
The fintech market, it's been incredibly disrupted over the last 5 or 10 years. I think customers are becoming more educated. What Ebury offer is, it's not a replacement of a banking service. A lot of these are effectively add-ons or alternative providers to a banking service. So I think people are becoming more educated. People are starting to understand the types of products and services that are out there for them in order to help them grow their business. It doesn't necessarily mean that Ebury will replace the bank, because that particular client may only use Ebury for one or two functions. Maybe it be payments, maybe it be lending. But I think, people are getting more aware. People are also aware, that typically with the cumbersome processes of banks, which can traditionally be very expensive, very slow, there are alternative methods and quicker and more effective and efficient ways of doing things.
How have global events affected fintech? COVID, potential recession, a global recession.
It's a really, really good question. Firstly, looking at COVID, looking at a potential recession, this will have an impact on business operations. So for a lot of the fintech businesses, a lot of clients, in terms of supply and demand, potentially that will reduce revenue performance of certain fintechs because the supply and demand may not be there. On top of that, I think it's very clear we've got a tougher environment to raise money. Looking at the VC funding, money was very easy and free 3 or 4 years ago. That's certainly not the case. We've also had a readjustment of valuations of fintechs. If you look at how they're valued now, it's definitely changed, which again makes the environment tougher. And then on top of that, you've got a harder environment in terms of an IPO or an exit. So, looking at IPOs, looking at M&As, that environment is more difficult. So, when you look at that, whilst we will always have the ongoing, I think the ongoing innovation, disruption of fintech, and this will continue to thrive, we're certainly entering a period where I feel that the market conditions are going to be tougher and more challenging. What you may well see is, the fintechs that have strong recurring revenues, the fintechs that have, solid revenue streams, and the fintechs that are profitable will continue to do very well. But maybe what you'll also start to see is some of the fintechs, that have been running at losses for a number of years, of which there are some with very high valuations, will start to struggle because they may not be able to go and access the capital they need for growth. So it will be a very interesting next 5 or 10 years, I think.
Tom, you've been with Ebury, since the very, very early days, over a decade. How do you see the next decade panning out for the company?
I think we're in a really interesting phase of growth for Ebury. Looking at Ebury now, we have very, very strong coverage globally. Traditionally, we've been a European-focused business with multiple offices throughout Europe. Recently, with the Santander investment, we've started to focus more on South America. There's a big focus on the Middle East and Africa. So we're going to start to really use Dubai as a hub. We see there are big opportunity in the UAE, but also looking further afield and looking down to Africa, looking for Israel, for example, potentially looking at India. So I think, what is Ebury's plan? Ebury's plan is to consolidate the growth that we've seen in Europe and continue to grow at the rate we are, but also now to look at new markets and how we can go and offer those products and services within those new markets.
Which sounds like a really interesting future ahead. Thanks a lot for being with us, Tom Davis.
Thank you very much, Greg. Thanks.